Hi, I'm Payton and I'm autistic, but we're in a bit of a new setting today, and that's because I'm out of town. I'm not home, so this is kind of the best I could do. I hope it's okay with you guys. So this video is about stimming, specifically autistic stimming. So if you don't know what that means, I'll put the definition on screen, but if I had to define it in my own words, I would say that it is a self-stimulatory behavior, and it can be anything that stimulates any of your five senses as a way to regulate yourself. A stim is not like a tic like somebody with Tourette's would have. A stim is a lot more voluntary. I don't know a whole lot about Tourette's. I think it's like somewhat voluntary, but at some point that tic is going to happen, regardless of whether or not you try to suppress it. And with stims, it's like you can suppress them, but it's damaging your ability to regulate yourself. And when it's an autistic person or a neurodivergent person that is constantly taking in more sensory input, that's incredibly damaging to them because they're dealing with all of that on a daily basis and not having a way to regulate themselves because society has told them that their way of coping with it is, it looks weird, it's socially inappropriate, like why are you doing that? And it's fucked up. Our sensory experience is heightened for the most part. I mean, we can be hypo or hypersensitive to sensations, so some things our senses are very heightened to, and sometimes our senses are very numb to things. It just kind of differs autistic person to autistic person, and it can change throughout one single autistic person's life. But because our sensory experience is so intense, I think that's another reason we probably stim, is because some sensations are so overwhelming in a really, really bad way, but some sensations are, I guess, overwhelming in a really good way, and like an almost euphoric way. It is so windy right now. I don't know if you guys can hear it. I'm sorry if you can. It's literally like shaking my truck right now. So I remember one time in middle school, I was at lunch and I was standing up, bending over, talking to this girl, like one of my friends, I guess, kind of. And this girl that was sitting at the table with her was like, looked at me and she was like, "Can you just stand still?" Because I didn't really realize it, but I guess when I'm talking to someone or doing anything, I'm like using my hands a lot and I'm moving my body a lot, and I'm just stimming a lot, and I never fully realized that until she said that. And obviously I didn't know I was autistic back then, so I didn't know why I did that, but it just makes sense now after I got the diagnosis. I remembered that and I was just like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. I do that with so many things from my childhood. I just like look back on it and I was like, wow, I was so obviously autistic and nobody knew. Like, what the fuck? But that leads me into some examples of stimming, just so you guys can get somewhat of an idea if you don't know what stimming is. So flapping, just like hand flapping or flapping like any part of your body, is a really stereotypical one, but it's one that a lot of autistic people do. It's just like a really like easy repetitive movement that is like regulating, like kind of like bouncing your leg, anything like that repetitive. Any repetitive movements like that is pretty obvious stim. Anything like dancing or moving in a certain way that feels regulatory and just like good to you is most likely a stim. Any sort of pressure, one that I do is I don't even know how to explain it, but I like put pressure on like the bed of my nails, like the entire bed of my nail, and I just like kind of slide like my fingers or like whatever skin that I have putting the pressure on it like off. I do that so much, and it's just kind of subtle. Like I can do that in my lap and people not really see what I'm doing. And I've always done that, and I didn't know why, but it's pretty obviously a stim. Now that I've been diagnosed, it makes a lot of sense. Also, nail biting or nail picking can be a stim. That's a pretty common one. I bite and pick my nails. I will bite my lip until it bleeds. I will bite my nails until they bleed. Like, it's not great. And those were all like feeling or touch related stims. Also, just like rubbing certain textures can be a stim. The lip biting is also sort of an oral stim, or like biting things in general can be a huge stim, or like chewing on things, or even certain flavors or textures of foods can be a stim. I love the fucking sound. It's also like an auditory stim for me, but I love the sound and the crunch of biting into like raw baby carrots. Oh my god, it's amazing. I dip them in ranch, and just like the crunch, it's the most beautiful sound, and just like feeling of the crunch, it's great. Great stim. Singing is also an oral stim. It can also be an auditory stim. Music would be a great auditory stim. I whistle a lot as a stim, and I started just like normal like whistling, but I got in trouble for that at school all the time, so I started doing it in the back of my throat, which is really weird, and with my tongue, because it makes it quieter. But oh my god, I do this under my breath during conversations and just at random times all the fucking time, and people just look at me like, why are you wheezing? And I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't even notice that I'm doing it most of the time. But it's like, I'll try to do it now. That's the one with my tongue, and then the one in the back of my throat is like a lot quieter. Don't know if you can hear that, but I can like, yeah, do that with my mouth wide open, just like whistle with the back of my throat, which is really weird, but it's just something that I adapted to do, so I didn't get in trouble whistling at school. And like the feeling of it is definitely part of why I do it, but the majority of it is I try to get that like really long, high-pitched whistle, and then I feel satisfied, and I don't have to do it as much anymore. I might still do it, and then like if I might start doing it again, I'll have to get that high-pitched whistle again to stop doing it. It's really weird, but like I need to get that like high-pitched, long, perfect whistle from the back of my throat. And I guess like the auditory stim of that is just very soothing to me, so I do that one a lot, which is really weird to me anyway, but like what's normal. But honestly, any noise that you find soothing, like repetitive noises are a huge one. I used to tap, well, I did this one time, but I was tapping my headphones, because like we had headphones on at school in class for some reason. We were doing something on the computer, and I was tapping the fucking earmuff thingy, and I didn't realize it was loud. It was just kind of like echoing into the earmuff, so I thought it was fairly quiet, but then I look up and everybody in the fucking classroom is staring at me, and I'm like, what? And they were like, tapping, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, sorry, and I just like stopped and went back to what I was doing. That was mortifying. I was in 7th grade when that happened, I think. Yeah. And I was just like, damn. But yeah, I was just like doing that repetitive sound because it was like soothing and helping me concentrate on what I was doing. And then I didn't realize everybody could hear it, and it was Another one is echolalia. It's the urge to kind of, I'll put a definition on screen, but echolalia is just kind of like the urge to say something that you've heard previously because it feels good to say in your mouth, is the best way I can describe that. For example, there was this certain medicine that was advertised on TV one time, and I cannot remember the name of it for the life of me, but the pronunciation was so weird to me that I was sitting there just saying the word in my mouth, like not saying it out loud, but just like mouthing the word over and over and over again, because I was just like so weirded out by, I don't know, like just the pronunciation of it was just like really soothing and like weird to me. So I kept doing it, and then I look over, because I was like a young teenager at this point, and I look over, my legal guardian is just staring at me, and I'm just like, the word, I was trying to pronounce the word, and she was just like, you were really trying, and I was like, yeah, like I didn't know what I was doing because I didn't get diagnosed until I was 19, but now looking back at all of the shit like that, I was just like, did nobody know what autism looks like? Like, does nobody, like, guys, this is concerning. But another sense that can be stimulated is your sense of smell, your nose. Anything like perfumes or cologne, certain scents, candles can be a really obvious stim. Certain foods can also, like the smell of certain foods, also the taste or texture of certain foods, like food in general is just a really stimmy thing. Another thing though, personally, the smell of books or like new books from the library, I just, like, I want to smell the books. I hate reading, but I just want to go smell the books because they smell so good. I don't know, that's a really weird one to me, but I love the smell of books. And then this one is very specific to me, but there was this little box. I don't even know what it would be for. It was just like a little box that had a little latch, and you opened it, and it was pink, and it had a little heart on it, and I had it when I was, like, a toddler, and like I had it throughout my childhood, but it smelled so good. I don't know if it was the paint inside of it or what. Like, you couldn't really smell it on the outside, but if you kept the box shut and you opened it, the smell, I wouldn't keep anything in there. I just wanted that box because I love the smell of it, and I would go in there and I would just smell it just to like soothe myself. Like, it was so soothing. And I remember I would always make sure that I kept it closed so it wouldn't lose the smell, because if I left it open, like, that paint would, like, I don't know, it just like kind of lost the smell. So one time I remember finding it open, and I don't know if one of my cousins left it open or if I left it open or what happened, but I saw it and I like died. I like smelt it immediately, and I couldn't smell the smell on it anymore. I was so upset for so long, and I closed it and I left it alone for a few months, and I went back to it after that and opened it, and the smell was back, and I was so happy. I was so relieved. I don't have that box anymore. I wish I did, but the smell of it was just amazing. Now, visual stims are a huge one for me personally, and I know this for a fact because in my autism assessment, when she was giving me my feedback and my diagnosis, she was like, you're a very visual person. I can't remember exactly how she put this. I'd have to like read my diagnostic paperwork again, but it's like she said that I would do well, or I might do well in a job that had to do with using my visual, like interior design or art or something like that, which is kind of funny because I've always been interested in stuff like that. Like, when I was really little, I wanted to be a caterer and decorator for parties because I love like the organization of putting parties together. The socialization part of that would be awful though. And also, like, I love doing art. I love painting. That is a huge, like, coping mechanism for me, I guess. I use that to regulate myself a lot. Mostly because of the visual aspect of it. I am a very visual person. I see the beauty in very small details, and I spend a lot of time working on small details. When I was little, I would set up this dollhouse that I had. I wouldn't like play with them because, okay, I had little animals for starters, not dolls, but I wouldn't like play with them and make like little stories with them or anything. I would just spend hours, and I mean hours, setting them up in little scenes to look cute. And then once I got the whole place set up and all of the animals organized, I would sit there and stare at it for like probably a good hour or more. And then if I still felt like organizing, I would take it all apart and then put it all back together in a slightly different way that was just visually pleasing to my eye, because that was regulating to me. And I remember people being like, yeah, Payton just sits out there with her dollhouse for hours playing with it. And I was like, I mean, yeah, I guess I'm playing with it, but I'm really just kind of looking at it because it's pretty. And when I got older, I started collecting gnomes, and I spent all of my allowances on gnomes, and I built this like little gnome village that I would spend hours organizing and just staring at because it was pretty and it just helped me regulate and process, and I just enjoyed it. So those were like huge visual stims for me, but like honestly, like I couldn't even begin to scratch the surface of what all could be visual stims, because that's going to be different for everybody. Like beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But you know, sunsets, art in general, I have notes, that's why I'm looking down, but just like anything like organized like that, in my opinion. Like I love like when my house is just like perfectly cleaned and organized. I love moving because I love setting up new places. Like I just like seeing like empty spaces that I get to decorate how I want to and organize how I want to. For this next part of the video, I am going to put a trigger warning up, because while there's nothing wrong with stimming in and of itself, whether or not it looks weird to you, there can be harmful and painful stims that autistic people do use, and I am going to touch on that just because it is part of stimming. So if anything like self-harm related triggers you, please leave the video now. Like, I completely understand. You can come back to the next one if you want to. I want you to protect your mental health, because that is what's most important. With that being said, there are harmful stims, and that can range from anything like you know, biting your nails or your lip until it bleeds, which I do all the time, unfortunately. Like, I try not to, but it's just, it kind of happens. Hair pulling in general, and that can be like anything like trichotillomania, which is, I don't know a whole lot about it. I'm gonna put a definition of that on screen as well. But that's like the urge to pick at your hair, I guess, and that can be to like an extreme level where it can be like really painful and not great, you know. And then there are, what I personally experience, I wouldn't say it's trichotillomania. Especially when I was younger, whenever I would get upset and I didn't want or didn't know how to like take out my frustration, or didn't have like a way to do so, instead of lashing out at somebody else or inanimate objects because I didn't want to damage anybody else's property, I would kind of internalize and kind of like find ways to subtly painfully stim, because that's the only way I knew how to cope when I was so overwhelmed and distraught and upset when I was younger, because I didn't have coping mechanisms. I would pull my hair. Like, I would grab a fucking handful of my hair and just pull it as hard as I fucking could, because that's the only thing I knew how to do to regulate myself, and it was the most subtle. Like, I couldn't just like start punching myself or something in public, so I would kind of just yank at my hair. Hitting is another one. I have personally gotten to points, I don't do this very often, I will say that, but I have personally gotten to points where I have gotten so upset and overwhelmed that I have hit myself to the point where I have bruised myself, just because, again, I didn't know how to regulate and I didn't want to hurt anyone else or anything else, so I did it to myself. Which is, it's not a great coping mechanism, obviously, but I'm just being honest. There's also head hitting that I know a lot of autistic people deal with, like some to pretty intense levels, where they will hit their head against walls or objects to the point that they make themselves bleed or worse, and that's really scary. I personally have never experienced that. And then there are ones that you think of more when you say self-harm, like cutting or burning, and I will be honest, I have experienced that when I was younger, towards like middle school. It was just kind of like, again, one of the only coping mechanisms that I knew like of, or how to deal with. Like, I didn't know how to regulate myself, and I wasn't in a healthy environment, and I was undiagnosed, and I was dealing with a lot, and I used a lot of unhealthy coping mechanisms. Future Payton editing here, I just wanted to pop in and say this because I didn't say it in the video for some reason, but stimming in general, especially the self-harm aspect, is really done, at least personally, as a way to release that emotion, whether it's good or bad, but especially when it's bad and overwhelming. That's when self-harm kind of steps in, or did in my life, because I needed a way to release that really quickly, and that's the only way that I knew how to. Unfortunately, there are harmful stims, but for the most part, stimming in general is not harmful. Like, if it looks weird, it doesn't matter. If it's harming them or other people, that's a cause for concern. But if your autistic loved one or just some autistic person that you know is doing some repetitive movement or doing something that looks a little weird, it's not hurting anyone. Like, it doesn't matter. Who cares if it looks weird? Tell me what your definition of normal is, because I guarantee you it differs person to person. Nobody's definition of normal is the same, because normal does not exist. Honestly, I think as a society we need to be more accepting in general of people's differences, whether or not they're autistic or neurodivergent. Not to mention, it can be incredibly dangerous for some autistic people to stim, which is literally atrocious. Like, I hate that I even have to say that, because what the fuck is the world that we live in right now? But it can be, like, actually dangerous, because people will assume that autistic people are just, like, on drugs or mentally ill when they're just being their authentic self. And it's just, like, instead of assuming that the person that's acting a little funny is crazy or high, maybe just accept that people are different, and, like, if they're not hurting anyone, why are you judging the fuck out of them? Why are you so concerned? I just wish we were more accepting as a society, but we can all learn and grow and better ourselves, and hopefully as a society we slowly start to do that, because we need to desperately. And I'm not excluding myself from that. I still obviously have so much to learn and so much growing to do, as does every other human being on the face of the earth. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please let me know if I left anything out. I know that I did, because there's no way that I could have covered everything on stimming in one video. I wish I could, but there's just too much. So please let me know your thoughts in the comments section, and consider giving this video a like and channel a subscribe. If not, totally understand. Have a blessed day, and lace the fuck up.